What's going on, everyone? If you're wondering why I'm at the bookshelf right now, I'm upstairs in my living room. I'm going to leave fairly soon. I'm waiting for my aunt, and she's not here. So I wanted to record this quickly and respond to this argument. It's a very popular argument that Jesus never says, I am God or worship me. So therefore, he never claimed to be God. Now, what I'm going to do is sort of give you an analogy to show the absurdity of this argument, what we should actually be doing to see whether Jesus claimed to be God or not, give you an example of a Muslim using this fallacy against other Muslims. I will respond to one argument I heard for this standard of interpretation, and then I'll give you biblical examples where Jesus essentially is saying, "Worship me, and I am God." So, first, let's think of this analogy, right? There's a man he's got a good friend that's married, and he doesn't know that yet. So he asks him, "Hey, are you married?" And the guy says, There's my wife over there. Then the guy says again, Are you married? But then other guy says, I just told you, there's my wife over there. But then the other guy says, person A, person B, right? Then person A says again, No, you said there's my wife over there. You should be saying, I am married or I am not married. So let's analyze this, right? The fact that he said there's my wife over there already indicates, well, then he's married. In order to be married, you either have a wife or a husband. Person B is a man with a wife, therefore he's married, right? That should be clear. You don't even need to analyze it the way I did. That's clear. If he says my wife's over there, case closed. But the other guy's demanding the exact words, and that just shows the absurdity of this standard of interpretation. Demanding exact words is like asking someone to say in the exact words, "Are you? I am married," even though they have clear indications that they are married, right? You don't need those exact words. In fact, who is the judge as to what is exact words, right? Because some people might try to explain things away, right? Who is the standard for that? What is um, direct and indirect, right? What is explicit and inexplicit? Because I can bring passages, and I'm going to bring passages in a second, but they're going to say no, that's not explicit, right? So who is the standard of that, of what's explicit and inexplicit, or implicit, I should say? So that analogy should demonstrate how absurd this entire demand is. You don't need to see exact words in order for Jesus to be God. Now, there is an argument presented that, well, God often said in the Old Testament, I am God, so therefore Jesus should have said it to indicate he's God. Now, I think that's stretching passages in the Old Testament where God says, I am God. And I think it's misunderstanding the context, because oftentimes, a spiritual being is appearing to you. You're probably going to be nervous as to, oh my goodness, what is this? And so you'll see this with angels as well. They'll say, do not fear. I am the archangel Gabriel, or I'm a messenger of your Lord, right? They'll say something like that. So when God does his theophanies, his appearances, Old Testament appearances, he will say, do not fear, it is I the Lord, or something along those lines, to identify himself, right? Because you don't know you've never seen God. You don't know what the heck you're seeing, right? So Jesus didn't need to communicate it in that way because he wasn't appearing as a spiritual being, terrifying people, right? He was a human being. So he would identify himself as God in another way. Now, I want to show you, let me share my screen. I want to show you an example of a Muslim gentleman on YouTube. I believe he's a Quran only Muslim. I could be wrong. He seems to deny it, but also affirm it also. So I'm not going to accuse him if he's not, but he is not a Sunni or a Shia. He is against that. And so he says here, this is a community post of his 2 weeks ago, 3 questions you should never ask. Never ask a Zio for a DNA test. He's talking about Jews, right? For a DNA test. This is not really relevant to my point. It's just, so Muslims will probably agree with him here. Never ask a Trinitarian where it says Jesus is God in the Bible, which he didn't really word it in the traditional way, because I can show you where Jesus is called God, but they typically ask where he says, I am God. So they'll agree with this question. Yes, alhamdulillah, right? They'll never answer that question. They can only run around with excuses. And But then he asks this, right? Never ask a Sunni or a Shia where it says to be a Sunni or Shia in the Quran or Hadith, right? Now that is the same fallacy that they use to try to prove Jesus isn't God. The same exact argument. The only difference, now it's used against Muslim sects like the Sunnis or Shias and try to prove they're false and say, look, I'm the real one because I'm not a part of a sect, right? So if he's wrong with that, and I would agree that that is a bad argument and he shouldn't be using that, why is he wrong? But these same Muslims that use the same argument aren't wrong for using the same argument against Christians. Now, to finish this video, I want to go over John 5:23 and John 20:28 to 29, comparing that one with Psalm 35:23. So, John 5:23, I would argue, is where Jesus says, worship me. In John 5:23, it says that all should honor the Son. Well, before I do that, let's first establish how we should actually approach this issue. We should be doing faithful exposition of the text to let the text speak for what it's saying, right? We shouldn't have to impose our standards of, well, I want this exact word, otherwise it does not teach that, right? We have to let the text speak for itself. So we should take from the text whether it's trying to communicate Jesus as God or another thought. We shouldn't assume that, well, it doesn't say I am God, therefore it's saying something else. We need to have a faithful exposition to make sense of what the text is saying. So when we go to John 5:23, it says that all should honor the Son just as they honor the Father. He who does not honor the Son does not honor the Father who sent him. So let's break this down. You should honor the Son in the same way, just as, right? Hutos, I believe in the Greek, they honor the Father in the same way. And in fact, if you do not honor the Son, then you do not honor the Father. So you must honor the Son in the same way you honor the Father to honor the Son. However, in order to honor the Father, you will honor him through worship, devotion, as if to a deity. Therefore, in the same way as you do worship to the Father, you also worship the Son. Therefore, you should worship the Son according to Jesus' words. This is me expositing the text and taking from what it means, not imposing standards of exact words. I challenge people, Muslims that disagree, or whoever that disagrees that uses this argument, provide me a counter interpretation that is more plausible than mine. I've not heard of one, and I don't think I ever will. I think this one is very clear. Next one, John 20:28 to 29. And Thomas answered and said to him, my Lord and my God. The Greek for this, Ipen auto ha kuriosmu kai ha theosmu. And this same Greek construction shows up in Psalm 35:23 in the Greek Septuagint, where it says the same thing. The roles are reversed. It just says God first, but it's the same grammatical construction. Ha theosmu kai ha kuriosmu, the same construction. So you can use that construction to apply it to two terms to the one person. And it also is Ipen autu, to him, right? Ipen auto, excuse me, auto, not autu. So Thomas is not speaking to the Father or to anyone else. When he says God here, it is to Jesus. That's what the verse says. So then Jesus said to him, Thomas, because you have seen me, you have believed. Jesus here affirms what Thomas said as belief. He does not reject it. He affirms it as belief. Therefore, not through his own exact words, but he does affirm that he is indeed God. There's a similar thing in John 16:30 to 31, where the disciples say Jesus is knows all things, and then he says, do you now believe, right? So he affirms it. So, to summarize, this is fallacious argumentation. This is not a standard you use when interpreting text to try to see what they're saying. What you do is take from the text, see what it says, and draw a conclusion from it by faithfully expositing it and letting it speak. My aunt just arrived, so I think I'm going to end this here. But thank you all for watching. Hope this was very beneficial. This helped you think. So with that being said, God bless you all, and goodbye.